So, welcome everyone to our speaker series, Diversity, Dynamics and Crisis in Paleontology. This is already our sixth talk of the series. So before I introduce our speaker, I would like to highlight our code of conduct to make sure that this session runs smoothly. So there are live captions available for this talk. So you can use the closed caption or CC button to toggle this button on and off. You can also submit your questions during the talk via the Q&A box that is at the bottom of your screen or via the chat. There is no need to wait until the end. Today we'll be hearing from Dr. Luisa Echeverría King. So Luisa has a master's degree in linguistics from the Universidad de Antioquia and a master's degree in teaching German as a foreign language from the Pedagogical University of Freiburg in Germany. She studied linguistics, translation, and cultural studies at the University of Mainz in Germany, and she has a PhD in education. She is currently the leader of the Academia Internacional at SENA in Colombia, which seeks to develop international key and technical competencies in apprentices and instructors through partnerships with partners from around the world. She's also a consultant and researcher in international education. And she's also the vice president of the Colombian chapter of the UNESCO World Organization of Women in Science in Developing Countries. So over to you, Luisa.
Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to share some thoughts about constructive partnerships and constructive projects. So I will be sharing my screen right now. So, a minute. So, when we think about projects and when we think about international collaborations and international projects, we have to think also what is the role of science in society. When we are scientists, when we start working internationally, we need to think about science and what we do in our everyday life, not only as a way to respond to global challenges and to global needs, and also to search for everyday solutions in our life, but we also need to think of science in terms of influence. So what we want to change in our world, what we would like to see like in some other way. So I would like to ask you, and maybe you can use the chat for this question, and we can review it by the end of this presentation. What is the role of science in society? What do you think about this role? And how can you contribute to this role of science?
So it seems, Luisa, are you back with us? So Luisa, I think I didn't hear you like when you started.
I think I can restart. Maybe that was some problem with the internet.
Yeah. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will restart by saying that I'm very grateful to be here with you in this Congress. And I also wanted us to think a little bit about the role of science in society when we are thinking about constructing meaningful relationships that can support the creation of projects with impact in our societies. So when we think about the role of science in society, maybe we think stuff like, okay, science needs to address global challenges or social needs. For instance, in our region in Latin America, I come from a country, Colombia. For instance, science, we do mostly applied research, and is mostly oriented for societal science, social needs. So I wanted to ask you to think about the role of science in society, and think in your role as researchers, what do you want to change in the society where you live in, and also thinking about the society as the globe. We have been taught to think about the importance of creating new knowledge, of improving education, of science, of the relevance of science in creating better quality in our lives. But I wanted you to think about the role of science also in terms of influence when we think in these constructive and meaningful projects. We have to think also in the current situation that we are experiencing right now. We have still the COVID-19 crisis. For instance, in Latin America, this crisis has been has impacted very negatively our economies, for instance. We have a lot of climate problems. We have also situations addressing these global commons. We have still laws and norms that are putting some framework for these global commons. We have had, for instance, in the last weeks, some problems with Facebook, with Meta, with the cyberspace, for instance, also with the oceans. So we have been experiencing situations addressing these global challenges. We have tensions still between the countries of the North and the South. We are experiencing also like a global mental health crisis because of COVID-19. For instance, in Latin America, we have been having lots of crises between with the topic of education access and infrastructure, because the problems that we have, for instance, accessing internet and other things that also wires and stuff, because in the huge cities, we have no problems with technologies and infrastructure. But for instance, in the fields and other parts of the country, we have been experiencing lots of problems in infrastructure. We have also experienced the bad side of globalization, because for instance, in the countries of the South, we have a lot of brain drain, which is one of the bad sides of the globalization. Challenges related to technology access, as I was saying, lack of opportunities also in the access of education. We are also experiencing a crisis in the multilateralism. We have seen that many multilateral organizations are having a crisis, and the people are not believing in them. And we also have been experiencing as scientists these anti-science and anti-evidence movements that are impacting negatively the stuff that we do as scientists. For all these crises that we are experiencing, there are some competencies to transform our society and shape our future, which are recommended by the OECD. These competencies are more oriented to educators, but as scientists, we are going to teach someday. Maybe we are going to design also courses and be involved somehow in educational projects. And it's important that we reflect in these competencies for the transformation of our societies. So when we think about new projects, we have to create a new value. And innovation is one of the competencies that we should develop as scientists and also as educators. We have to also to be system thinkers. We have to reconcile tensions and dilemmas. Sometimes we are going to be working in these transnational projects where we have people with different worldviews, with different views to see also the life and research. So we have to reconcile these tensions and dilemmas and be system thinkers, and also take responsibility. Sometimes we think only in the objectives of our research, but by taking responsibility, we think a little bit more, and also in the impact that we can have in communities, in societies, and also maybe within the field work, we can do a little bit more than just, you know, taking the data that we want to take home. So this is also some questions that I want to ask you, and maybe you can use also the chat, and we review it by the end of this presentation regarding community engagement. Have you been doing field work in other countries? How was this engagement with the community during these projects? What would you like to do for this community if you have some ideas? And also we have here some ideas about trust and relationships, inclusion and participation, horizontality, and knowledge exchange that I want to expose further in my presentation. So regarding modern science, it is important to think about science as teamwork. We have been sometimes taught to be a little bit competitive in this science business, but science is teamwork. And leadership is a role that we should achieve within this teamwork that we want to create by doing these international projects. So when we think about leadership, we should always think about empowerment, and empowerment of the diversity of the team, of the different profiles that we could have within a team, so that we can create an inclusive culture that can be supportive and creates also commitment from all the people that are involved, so that everyone sees the point collaborating in the project and can contribute to their best. So I wanted also to share some information about research and development for all that are interested in collaborating, for instance, with Latin America, because I think it is important to see the development between the different parts of the countries, and also the situation that we are experiencing currently in Latin America, with a very low investment in research and development. It is important to say that by the beginning of the year 2000, and also until the year 2016, we had been experiencing a loss of improvement in the investment regarding research and development for Latin America. But since 2016, the investment has stopped, and it's like very, it has not evolved since 2016. And that's something that we can relate to the economic crisis that has experienced the region since about 5 years ago. When we think about the situation of Iberoamerica, I mean, also including Spain and Portugal, the development is a little bit different because they have been experiencing a positive trend, but until 2019, where we see also like this stable development that is not really advancing in this investment. Another trend, which I think is very important to say about research and development in Latin America, is that more than 60% of the investment in whole Latin America is just made by one country, which is Brazil. And this is important to say because you see the difference between the countries. We have like Brazil, which is a very important country in the region with lots of investment, and we see the other countries that don't really have great investment on science, and this causes like this decreasing of the region to advance in this topic of research and development. We also see that the government is the major funder of research and development in the region. And we have also experienced in other parts of the world that, for instance, the enterprises give a lot of support for research and development, and this is not necessarily the case in Latin America. And we also see that higher education institutions play a major role as research and development centers, which is also not the case in other parts of the world. We see also that from the global investment of research and development, just 2.6% of the investment is being done in Latin America, which shows, you know, like the problem that we have when we compare to other regions of the world. We have also some topics which are important for the region, which, for instance, the topic of biodiversity is very important for the region, the protection of ecosystem, also research in agricultural issues, and the fight against hunger. These are topics that are, you know, where you can find a strong research teams in Latin America. And I think it is important to know these topics in order to address problems also from the communities. So the Latin American paradigm. So we see a very diverse region with disparate capabilities and infrastructures about the countries. As we were saying, we see countries such as Brazil or also Argentina, Chile. We see countries in between, for instance, like Colombia, and we see all other countries, for instance, as Guatemala, Honduras, with more problems regarding the investment and development of research. We have an easy access to natural resources because we have a lot of natural resources. We have universities and research centers with broad social outreach activities. Maybe the people that have been collaborating with Latin America can relate with this statement that really the universities in Latin America do a lot of outreach work in the communities and for the communities. That's something which is really important regarding also the quality assurances systems in the universities. We have in Latin America regional blocks, like regional economic blocks. Maybe you have heard of some for instance, as Alianza Pacífico, Mercosur, but these regional blocks are not doing like a lot for the promotion of research and development. There are some programs, but there are small programs with a small investment. As you have seen in the previous slides, there is a lack of funds and economic supports for the development of research. And we have also in countries like Colombia, a lot of small organizations and entities that are doing stuff that sometimes are programs which are quite similar, but everyone is doing like the same program at other levels. So we have seen that the entities sometimes don't really work together to foster these programs and to create like stronger programs. We also see research and development policies which are not designed for the long term, and that's a problem because we have a government, for instance, for 4 years or 5 years, and then after that comes another government with another policy, with other programs, and that's something which has impacted very negatively our research and development programs. And after seeing all these, diagnoses of the Latin America region, I also wanted to bring this concept. Maybe you have heard it a lot. The concept of global social responsibility that we should have as researchers, and bring it together with this North-South paradigm in research collaboration. We have seen that some kind of interdependence between the North and the South. We have seen also that in the South, we publish fewer documents resulting from research, fewer articles. And we have also, for instance, our own journals that maybe our journals are not like in this impact journals that are well known worldwide. We have fewer patents. Many of the patents that we have in Latin America come from international companies, for instance, that are located in Latin America. So you can imagine. And we have less economic activities that are based on knowledge, on know-how. So we have still a lot of economic activities that are based on these extractive, activities such as oil extraction and so on. So as you have seen, we have a scientific panorama where the scientific community is reduced in our countries. We have also other sources of knowledge, which is something very interesting to know. We have, for instance, a lot of ancestral knowledge, a lot of indigenous communities. We have also knowledge from the campesinos communities, for instance, or for the Afro communities. So we have to find a balance between the knowledge resulting for the scientific methods and also other sources of knowledge that we have in Latin America. We have a lot of applied research, as I was telling in the first slides. We have not enough scientists with a PhD training, fewer resources, more of these extractivist activities, as I was telling, and our economies are not based in knowledge, but we are natural laboratories, for instance. We are in the field work like the whole year because we are natural laboratories. We have also political tensions, as you have seen in the news. Latin America experiences lots of tensions because of political issues, and also in some parts of the region, violence. That's something that we have to say. We have also countries which are very centralized. For instance, Colombia is a country which is very centralized, like all the national government, and the most important, for instance, decisions are taken in Bogota, in our capital. But we have also vibrant regions. We have regions which are very vibrant and that are doing a lot of stuff. So we have to also balance all these all these tensions that we have and these dilemmas between a center and a region. And also we have vibrant communities. We have vibrant communities that experience, of course, you know, that many economical challenges, many societal challenges and educational challenges, but also can support the projects that we are doing because of the experience that they have. So the question arises, how can we structure projects that are meaningful for all of us? We have seen the situation, the diagnosis that we have, but what can we do? How should we advance towards these meaningful projects? This is a very nice statement that I found, and I think it is important when we think in this statement when organizing these transnational projects. Sometimes we think, when we think in these scientific projects, we think in terms of winning. So I will be publishing 2 or 3 articles. I will be doing this, doing that. But we also need to see this in terms of collaborating, in creating like these horizontal collaborations, when we can escape a little bit this asymmetry that we have been experiencing since the beginning of our territories. I wanted to share with you some successful stories, some stories that I think that are interesting to know, so that we can reflect on the impact that are having these projects in the communities, and we can take some ideas home from these situations. We have the project which is called OVOP Colombia, which is a project that we are undertaking in SENA, in the institution where I work right now, with JICA, which is the Japan International Cooperation Agency. And this project wants to identify products and services from the Colombian communities, so that they can improve this project, these services, and marketing them also internationally. For this, OVOP project has created, for instance, protocols, guides, has trained more than 200 people around Colombia for this. So we see some ideas such as training of people, the creating of curriculum and courses, and the creating, for instance, of protocols. The STOREN project, I have been in touch with Universidad del Magdalena, which is located in Santa Marta. It's a very nice city. Maybe you have heard about this city. It's a very like touristic city here in Colombia. And this is a project which is co-financed by the European Union. It's an Erasmus Plus project. And within this project, a new master program was created for this institution. So you see, the project is not, about sharing knowledge and products of research, but also creating new curricula, for instance. In the project GeoRes, which is a project that wants to develop solutions for the reuse of waste of geomaterials, they aim to develop protocols for this. And this is important because in countries like Latin America, we need those protocols. And I mean around the world. So as you have seen so far, we have outcomes that are more than the research paper or the participation in a conference. And for instance, and last but not least, we have this last project, which is about heritage and about the violence that have been experiencing some communities in Argentina and in Colombia. And for this project, they want to create international networks and intersectoral networks for knowledge transfer. So as we have seen, we have some approaches, some common approaches that I want to share. And I also have added other approaches that I have seen in other projects. We have curriculum development. We have knowledge exchange. I want to talk about exchange and not transfer because we have also a lot to offer. So it is important that we think in knowledge about exchange. Technology exchange also, infrastructure and resources sharing, aiming at common goals and challenges that maybe we have as society in a globe. We have common problems, and the goal of these projects should be also address these common problems. We have also capacity building, network creating, and new research networks. It is important that we think in this project also as an opportunity to create new networks that can support not only our research, but also all these other activities. It is important also to recognize the value of other forms of work and other sources of knowledge, and also to insert it in the project that we are doing. Maybe we can organize a meeting with the indigenous community and try to understand their point of view regarding, for instance, climate change. So that's something which is interesting. Trying always to identify these potential problems that the society has, the community has, and help them to solve them, and also try always to leave some kind of capacity installed. I mean, sometimes we don't really want to engage a lot, but it is important to engage in order to create a value and to have influence. And it is important that we also think, that's my last slide, in terms of communication. Sometimes we do a lot of outreach work, but we don't communicate properly, or we don't communicate them with the key stakeholders that really need to hear our voice, our ideas, and the results of our research. So it is important that we communicate not only to other research and to the communities, but also to policymakers, to other networks, and also to the funders of our research, and to cooperation agencies. And why not to diplomats? When we think in terms of science diplomacy, we need to engage with diplomats in order to create value. So this is the end of my presentation, and maybe we can switch right now to the chat and to the comments that we have been experiencing by the public. We have some comments there in the chat, I guess.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk. It was absolutely fabulous and so useful. I do have some questions already come in. Can I go ahead? I'll just remind everybody who's tuning in, do drop your questions into the chat or into the Q&A box, and we'll be able to pick them up. But starting off, oh, and do check the comments there, Luisa. There's some people thanking you already. So first question, the Brazilian government recently decreased the amount of funding for science. How do you think this has impacted the research and development in Latin America in general? And how could this affect the other countries in the future?
It can affect the other countries, of course, because we are trying to work more regionally in Latin America. We have, as I was saying, some regional blocks, but we also have another regional initiatives like networks from scientists, for instance, and also networks from universities that work a lot together. So this is going to have an impact in the other countries, of course, directly. We have been experiencing also other tendencies like AMLO in Mexico. Maybe you have heard about that. That there are a lot of tensions for the scientific community, but that's something where I think the international collaborations play a role, because when we have tensions in a country, when we have a government that is not really supporting research and development, we have to collaborate internationally in order to try to develop research and development. So I think for this political tensions, we have to think about international cooperation as one of the key areas for development.
Great, thank you so much for that. What is needed so that scientists collaborating with each other for more than just winning or publishing a paper? Where do we start, especially when this is the academic culture?
That's a very, very, very nice question. I think the most important thing which is needed is capacity building, is training. So I think we have to think about courses, webinars. Maybe if we are doing like a research project, maybe we can think also in a webinar series that we're going to be having, with the research project. So I think that's something that we can do, which is not so difficult to organize, and try to partner with an institution in the country so that you can live like a course designed or something like that to be implemented. That's something which we can start. We are not thinking about a master program such as the example that we have seen, because a master program, I mean, it was the outcome of I guess it was like 3 or 4 year program. I mean, as an outcome of a 4-year program, maybe you can think about that, but for a smaller time frame, maybe we can think about a course. Yes.
Cool. That actually links to a question I was just thought of, that if somebody's starting out that has no real experience in building capacity building or building connections with communities, what would your top tip be, or the one thing that you would implore them to consider?
The top tip would be to engage with someone from the country, so that you can have like a better linkage to the community, and just spend time with the community. When you come for 2 days or 3 days, or just do something, you are not going to engage. So you have to spend time with the community so that you can understand the worldviews, the culture, and why we take some kind of decisions that you think maybe is not so a very good decision, but that's our culture. So yes.
Great, that's awesome advice. In the chat, I'll read it out so everybody else can hear it, but you can probably read along yourself. Luisa, I see so many parallels to what has happened in the rural Appalachians in biodiversity, natural resources, both bio and georesources, etc., to what you were describing in the North-South paradigm. How do we get researchers in the North to address these inequalities in research, interest, engagement within our own country? For instance, if we look over to the research outputs of paleontologists in the state of WV, West Virginia, yes, they are not studying West Virginian georesources at all.
I think it is important also for the institutions where we are getting training. For instance, if I am being trained for my PhD in Germany, it is important that the institution in Germany also tries to engage the community and to share this knowledge and these problems that we have in the country. As we have seen during the presentation, that's something that we have in Colombia, and I think which is interesting because as our higher education institutions work so close with communities, we have identified like the problems, we have identified, you know, also the knowledge. Although we have also faced a lot of discrimination because we have also discrimination in our own countries. So I think the North-South paradigm is sometimes also in our own heads. And that's something that we have to work on ourselves as scientists, and also try to add value to our own knowledge and to our own countries. For me, it would have been, for instance, easier to go abroad and just work abroad and do everything abroad, but I just decided to stay here and also to say we are here, we have our own knowledge, we have also our own worldviews, and our own problems, and the problems that we face can also relate to other problems in other parts of the world. So that's our I think one of the things that we can do as scientists is to try to match this situation that we're experiencing here in our countries or in West Virginia or whatever with the situations that are experiences others in other parts of the world.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Another couple of questions. What are the options for scientists when the government themselves show a lack of initiative in research and development?
Mm-hmm. And that's something, as I was saying, that we are experiencing in many countries in Latin America. The most important thing that we can do is create networks. When we create networks, when we network with other people, not only at the national level, but also internationally, we share resources, we share knowledge, we exchange and work together and exchange knowledge. So I think the networks are mostly for free. So please create networks with other colleagues and share knowledge and work together in projects. Sometimes we don't have money for in order to publish a paper, but we have the natural laboratory. So please come to my country. We have the natural laboratory. You pay, for instance, the publication so we can share. So I think the most important tip is to create networks.
That's a really positive answer. I really like that. A much more broader one this time. You mentioned in your talk science diplomacy, and I only recently learned what that is. For the rest of us who also don't know what that is, would you like to elaborate on what that might be, what it entails?
Yes, of course. Sometimes we as scientists are between this interplay of science and, you know, the scientific method and publishing and stuff. But we also are in some spaces like diplomats from our countries, and we have to think about that. So science diplomacy are a range of activities which are between science and international relations. And as scientists, we have to get in touch with this concept, to understand it, and to develop these competencies that we need in order to be an effective science diplomat. Sometimes we are in spaces, for instance, with the politicians from another country, and we have to address issues from our own country with these politicians, and we have to talk to them in order to get, for instance, funding for a project. So we need to develop these negotiation skills, these intercultural skills, and other skills that we need in order to go further and can really be addressed as science diplomats, and just go further with the research made in our own country. When we are in these spaces, you think in this person as the Colombian woman who does research. So we have to present, you know, the best way we can also our country and the research made in our own country.
Fantastic. And the last question related to that is, for anybody who wants to get involved in this side of things, what would you recommend, or where would you send them to in terms of resources, maybe online or anything like that?
In the topic of science diplomacy, well, I would like to recommend the science diplomacy course, which is made by the consortium is for D4C, which is online and is for free. I have also been participating with Nusaiba, for instance, in other project, which is called the Warsaw Science Diplomacy School. It's a very, very intense school, but it's very, very nice, and I can really recommend it. And otherwise, there's a lot of literature in internet. There is also a call of papers, which was published by the beginning of this year, which is called is in Frontiers. It was called like Science Diplomacy in Latin America for Sustainable Development or something like that. And you can find there also like lots of information about science diplomacy with Latin America. I also published a paper there. I can also show about the situation here in Colombia, which is a topic for another conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all those resources. There's some links that have gone into the chat for anybody who's here who's interested. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and taking the time to speak to us today. It was absolutely fantastic and such important, useful information. Wrapping up both this session and the speaker series in total, mentioning next talk by our own Jansen Smith. We'll be talking about preliminary observations on the global effort to identify research priorities in paleontology, and that will be next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Universal Central Time. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and thank you again, Luisa.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Luisa.